All right, well, welcome everybody to the CoderDojo Worldwide Youth Coding Club movement or collaboration, I'm told now. My name is Kim Wilkins, and I attended the Global Education Conference last year. I'll put my video up. As a participant, and it had such an effect on me. There was so much good information and sharing with people that I wanted to get more involved this year. So I'm actually part of 3 different sessions. Also the founder of Teen Tech Girls, and just very excited about this session in particular because it's bringing together the founders of CoderDojo as well as folks who are doing mentoring on the ground here in the United States. So let me go to the next slide here. So we have the recording started. So of course this conference wouldn't be possible without all these great sponsors and supporters. I just find it amazing that this is free and available for anybody to participate in. So right now I'm going to give you permission to the whiteboard, and if you go to that second icon that says star and put where you are located on the map, that'd be awesome. Alrighty. Well, let me turn that off now. Okay, so here we are. So today we're going to be talking about what is CoderDojo, how and why did it start. We're going to have mentors share some of their experiences, and then we're going to talk about how you could start your own CoderDojo. And first, I'd like to try this polling feature. If you are under your name, you'll see that there's a check mark. And so if you've ever heard of CoderDojo before, you can select yes or no.
Is that right? Oh, this one. Okay.
The little check mark, you see?
Yeah, I get it.
All right, so we have a lot of CoderDojo folks, and hopefully more will be joining us that have yet to experience the wonderfulness of CoderDojo. So just quickly the facts. It was founded in Ireland last year by James Welton and Bill, who is actually here with us. I'm very excited about that. The guiding principles are it's open, it's free, it's all about learning. And just in this very short time, there's now over 150 CoderDojos in 22 countries.
Now 23.
23, great. All right, we're going to try another poll. I have to do something here quickly. Polling type A to D. All right, so you may be more than one of these, but what's the one that you are representing today? Educator, student, parent, or other? All right, so educators win the day. So I couldn't have done this without Lindsay, who helped me coordinate getting folks on board from Ireland. So we're going to start in Ireland, and Lindsay, I'm going to let you take over and introduce what's going on there.
Okay, hi there, guys. My name's Lindsay, and I'm a mentor in the CoderDojo movement. I have been for about 10 months, I think now, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm involved hugely in the Irish movement, in the Irish collaboration. It's an absolute delight today to introduce as well with me Bill Liao, who is one of the co-founders of the movement. And alongside James Welton, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. He's traveling to the US, doing some work with the collaboration of volunteers there in the States. So James is here listed in the slides. He's the youngest ever Ashoka Fellow, and he is a fantastic programmer. Can I move these? Are you doing them? Are you, Kim?
Yeah, I'm doing them. Do you want me to go on to Bill?
Okay. Yeah, skip on there to the next
Okay.
thing. And so the main thing I'd like to do is introduce Bill. He's the other co-founder. He's a serial entrepreneur, an investor, and just a generally fantastic guy. You can reach out to him at Liaonet. So I'll hand over to him to say a few words.
Oh, that was quick of you, Linz. I thought you'd tell a bit more about what it's like to be a mentor at CoderDojo, but maybe I'll throw back to you for that in a minute.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. I will, of course. I know we haven't got long. So, yeah, I would love to talk more about what it's like. It's the first time I ever walked into a CoderDojo, I just remember distinctly a kid come flying past me with a robot that they had built in a little team. And I walked into the room, and it was pretty chaotic, but it was so exciting. I just had to be part of it. I had read about 3 newspaper articles, and I was expecting to see a sort of dry youth group that was a bit boring, perhaps something a bit like the Cubs or Scouts I'd been involved with when I was a kid, which was kind of, didn't really inspire me much when I was involved anyway. So when I went into this room and I walked in, and there was a kid teaching how to build a website. Another area, there was a kid tearing apart computers. In another area, there's kids building modifications to games, and in another area, there's another committed mentor helping to teach JavaScript. It just blew me away that it was just perfect. It just fit what I realized was a problem with the education system, and that this was something different. This wasn't just this was a free, open learning environment. And it allowed kids to produce and get involved in so much easier, and to really addressed the modern world and really helped to get kids involved in that way. There's so many stories I could tell about different children that have done amazing things. I particularly really like the human aspect to it. There's a lot of stories of kids with Asperger's who have been able to overcome their limitations and being able to integrate into groups, handle uncertainty, because it's a very uncertain environment at times, because you go in and you're never quite sure where the kids are going to lead the session next. You could have a kid asking, how do we produce a website that's, I don't know, a social media network, and you have to try and figure out to explain how you might do that and start them along that path. Or you might be a kid asking how to build an app for the iPhone. In fact, we have one kid called Harry Moran who built an app for the iPhone. It was called PizzaBot, and he was 12 years old. And when he released it onto the App Store, it became the #1 selling game in Ireland. It outsold every other major name in the game industry that you may have heard of. And it held that for a good number of weeks, I understand, and it was just a fantastic success. And that's just one example of something that's really taken off from one kid that just had an idea, and CoderDojo allowed them to realize that in the real world. I think that's enough, just a little bit, just explaining about my experience at CoderDojo and what it means to be a mentor. To me, it's just the excitement and the buzz of facilitating kids to do what they dream of doing. So perhaps Bill would now explain a bit about the frustrations and what brought it about in the first place.
So CoderDojo started, as a sort of perfect storm of things came together. James Welton, who is my young co-founder, who's was at the time when he started CoderDojo was 19, just finished his leaving certification in Ireland from high school. He, when he was a bit younger, won a web award called the Junior Spiders Award in Ireland, and his school headmaster announced that he won this award. And what happened next was extraordinary. All these kids across the school that he was in sought him out to discover, how can I do that too? How can I win a web award? How can I code? How can I program something? How can I change a website? And so James founded a kind of impromptu underground computer club at his school, and he ran it for several years. But then when he left the school, that club shut down. And, I met James as an investor, and, because he'd started his own startup, and he described this to me, and what I heard was, oh my goodness, a random announcement in a random school called seeking behavior in kids, up to teenagers, to find the local geek because they needed information he had. And that to me was a kind of proof of market, that there must be an enormous demand. And, we sat down together, and he said, well, he was sad that it wasn't going to continue. And I said, well, hang on a minute. If there's that much demand, I'm sure we can structure something that will make it actually spread by itself. And James thought we'd need money for that, and I figured that we wouldn't need it, that we could create actually a collaboration that would be voluntary and global. And so we sat down to create a brand and to create a system and to test it. And the first thing you want to do when you create a brand is you want to come up with a great name. And if we'd gone with the original name of Saturday Morning Programming Club for Kids, it probably wouldn't have worked. And so my kids actually do a martial art called Kendo, and Kendo is learned in a dojo. And a dojo is a Japanese word. It means temple adjunct. And it stands for a specific type of learning. It's experiential learning, and there's an expectation that when you have reached a level of expertise in Kendo, that you will mentor the next generation of people to come in. And, you have subject matter experts who will come in and be senseis to teach specific things, or to mentor on particular techniques. And so we thought, well, why don't we take that form of that pedagogical form, in the dojo sense. By the way, the literal meaning of dojo is temple adjunct, because it's from the Japanese Shinto temples that they originated. And we take that pedagogy and we apply it to programming so that we could have a scalable system. Now, Kendo has been practiced for hundreds of years, and interestingly, it's always free. You don't pay to learn Kendo. And we thought, well, I specifically thought that we could achieve this for CoderDojo to teach code. And I approached the National Software Centre in Ireland, and I said, could you give us a room for 3 hours a week? And maybe on a Saturday. And they said, why should we give you a room? We rent rooms. And I said, well, do you have any kids? And they said, yeah. Well, would you like any of them to learn how to program? Yeah. Well, give us the room then. And so they very kindly donated the room, and we've had that room every week for a year and a half now. And we spent the first few months filling that room with kids and with programmers who volunteered, and basically seeing what would work. And I highly recommend a TED Talk by a fellow called Sugata Mitra. And Sugata Mitra actually did a very interesting thing. He's a professor at, I think, the University of Newcastle. And he actually put computers into slums, but he also put computers into other environments. And without teachers and without any sort of guidance, he discovered that kids can actually teach themselves an awfully large amount just by being in the presence of computers. And if they were in the presence of each other and computers, they tend to learn collaboratively and learn even more. And so what we decided with CoderDojo, and what we tested was, could we apply the Dojo principles, and could we apply Sugata's principles of getting kids to sort of learn together and have it work? And amazingly, it works extremely well. We have had many, many successes. We have found that the Dojo movement spreads very, very quickly. we've been able to have that movement spread without any funding. And there is a particularly interesting phenomenon in that many companies now are opening up their canteens and their offices to host CoderDojos and providing their own staff as mentors, and actually often their own kids as participants. So if you imagine a CoderDojo, it's a semi-chaotic room, and inspiring chaos is what I like to refer to it as. There are kids of all different ages there, and they're all there for a purpose, and that purpose is to learn how to get into the guts of computers and really manipulate that technology, reach in and bend it to their will. I mean, I often tell people, you know, if you look at in a particular audience, if you get all the people to put their hands up who can code, it's a small percentage of the community. And I often say to them, you know, those that know how to code are the whiz kids, and everybody else are the muggles. And the funny thing is there is a huge demand to learn how to code, and yet we're not actually teaching enough people how to code, and we're not teaching them young enough. Every piece of research that I've seen suggests that programming is actually a language skill. And there's a fairly large body of evidence to suggest that language skills are best acquired when you're young. So, you know, between the ages of like 7 and 17, which is what we suggest the age for CoderDojo is. And anecdotally, I'd like to say that the best programmers that I know, the ones that bring down the top money, that do the very top work in programming, they are like poets. Because just as a poet has sufficient language skill to be able to impart more meaning and more impact with fewer words, so too a coder poet is skilled in a way that they can produce more impact with fewer lines of code. And we want kids to grow up with that kind of facility with the language of computers. And this is why CoderDojo, to me, is an essential piece of our future landscape, because all of the programming courses that I saw when I was growing up have kind of disappeared. When I see the demand increasing for coders worldwide, day after day, it becomes a kind of moral obligation. Our entire society is predicated on an unlimited supply of code, and yet we've already run out of great programmers. You know, they command, an entry-level decent programmer is commanding like 140 grand a year at Facebook because they're just so hard to find. But there's something even better than a coder poet. It's a coder poet who can play well with others. And CoderDojo is a social environment. We designed it so that kids learn collaboratively and that they mentor each other so that they also progress socially. I've looked at the FBI profiles of some of the worst hackers in the world, and those profiles all have one line in common. They have the words socially isolated in there. And when you are great at computers and you're socially isolated, that's when you can turn to the dark side. That's when criminals can get at you. But at CoderDojo, you can become great at computers, and yet you have this weekly social interaction that's very powerfully protects you against the wrong sorts of influences. And I'm a great believer that the social side is just as important as the coding side. And this is why it's not about just being an online course. It's about meeting in the real world in a relaxed learning environment. And for me, it's also important that the kids learn to use power tools. I mean, there are plenty of proxies for programming out there. MIT Scratch is probably the best of those examples. And Scratch is certainly a valuable tool. It's not a real tool, though. It's still a toy. We want our kids immediately to start learning HTML and then CSS and then JavaScript so that they can actually start doing real things. And we've got kids in the program around the world learning things like Node.js. And Node.js, you'd be hard-pressed to find a college course in Node.js. And yeah, I've seen 13 and 14-year-olds putting together stuff in Node.js. it's the real power tools that I think is fantastic. And one of the great things about CoderDojo is that the kids' capacity to learn far exceeds that of most adults and certainly most mentors. And so you often see the kids blowing past any of the mentors that we have and becoming mentors themselves very quickly. I think that's all I have to say, other than it is growing massively. I was just in CoderDojo in Bucharest for their second session. I have seen it across the world, and one thing that I'm particularly happy about too is that in several of the CoderDojos, and in a growing number, there are equal numbers of boys and girls. And I think that's awesome, particularly CoderDojo Bur, CoderDojo Kinsale, CoderDojo Bucharest, where I just was, and CoderDojo New York. I believe that there's going to be some Q&A now. Is
actually, we're going to hear from the mentors here in Charlottesville, and then we'll wrap up with the Q&As. So that's all right. So thank you very much. Obviously, we've heard lots of good things. We're moving to Charlottesville, Virginia now, which is where we've been doing some CoderDojo as well. And you can't probably see these, but I'll post these slides later. But, you know, several of us in Charlottesville had heard about CoderDojo last year, and I pursued getting there on behalf of Teen Tech Girls. There was people in Albemarle County that were, county public schools that were pursuing it as well. And in fact, Vince Shivert, who I believe is on with us here, is the CIO there, and he actually really made things happen here in Charlottesville for CoderDojo. So we'll do another quick poll, clear this, and let me get back to the yes and no. All right, have you participated in the CoderDojo before? So we have a lot of enthusiasts here, and I think once you participate in the CoderDojo, you just want to keep going back and back. So we had our first CoderDojo experience here this summer. We called it the Summer Academy, and originally there were slots for 50 kids. Those slots got taken up in the first 10 minutes of registration, so Vince opened it up to 200 more slots. We had over 700 try to register for that event, so clearly there was a pent-up desire to have this sort of activity for kids. What we're doing now is actually having dojos meet across the district feeder patterns. I think we have at least 4 of them going on now. We're going to be talking to 3 mentors today to talk about their experiences, and then we might have other people that we've been inviting, other CoderDojo people here to the session, so we might have other people who can share their thoughts. So Paula, I'm going to hand it over to you.
You have to press your microphone button, perhaps, Paula.
Oh.
Yeah, you just push it once and it flicks on. It's a toggle on or off. Don't hold it down.
Looks like she's going through the audio setup again, so let me go on to John.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's John Barber. I teach at Walton Middle School in Albemarle County, Virginia. And I actually teach 8th grade English, and I just started a Scratch Exploratory 4 days ago. So it's really been kind of exciting trying to move over. We helped lead a CoderDojo at the end of the summer, right at the beginning of the school year. And I've been trying to apply as much as I could from what I learned from the CoderDojo experience into this class, and it's been a real challenge. When we first were planning the CoderDojo concept in Albemarle County, I was contacted by Ben Shivert, and he said, "We're putting this thing together." And I was coming in kind of thinking that I was going to be assisting, not really a teacher stand up at the front of the room kind of thing, but I didn't really know what a CoderDojo was going into it. Just what I've read online. And the unpreparedness that I had, it really led to a lot of really neat, great things, because from the very beginning, students came in, sat down, immediately started coding on Scratch. They were just excited to get the screen time. And the first hour, I was just kind of almost shaking my head. It was very much them showing off things to me. And every so often you would have somebody ask a question, but the amount of perseverance that I found that they had was absolutely amazing. They just kept trying different things, and they would show somebody, and somebody would say, "Oh, can you make it do this?" And that kind of thing. So they moved into kind of an arena where several of them became an expert at one skill. And so as I was moving around the room, if somebody was having trouble with one part, I could then direct them over to somebody else who'd already accomplished that kind of thing, and they were sharing. But the great thing about the CoderDojo concept that I would not have, I would have found it difficult, I guess, to plan, was that everybody was doing so many different things all at the same time, even though it was just on Scratch. I had two girls who designed a sprite for easily 2 hours. I mean, meticulously going over each and every pixel. And then once they designed it, then they were ready to start coding for it. But like while they were doing that, I had a group of boys who logged on to MIT's website, and they were just going through kind of playing the games on the little YouTube-style display. And then they moved on to downloading the games and remixing them. And then finally, they actually created a Pac-Man-style game. And this was just over the course of 2 days. They were self-described intermediate level. We had grouped by levels, and some of these boys had not seen Scratch at all, and in 2 days had already designed a game. So I think that the neat thing that I found about Scratch was it's got such a quick learning curve that it's sort of like a gateway programming language. It moves them into being able to see what they can do and just see all the many different things that they can create using programming languages, but it had such a low frustration level that they were just so excited to show things off the whole time. I caught how both Bill and Lindsay said the word chaotic. I think each of you said chaotic like 2 or 3 times. It was absolutely hysterical when I walked in. The classroom was in rows, and we were setting up the computers and having some difficulty kind of making sure everything was plugged in because we didn't want the computers to run out. We had 2 full sessions of CoderDojo each day. And over the course of the first day, the rows of death devolved into these, I just did air quotes with my hand, devolved into these groups and partners, and it was just absolute chaos. I'm sure that the custodial staff was just shaking their heads at what we did to their lovely room that started off so clean and nice and meticulously put into rows and everything, because by the end it was all over the place. But it was so much excitement, and they were all so busy wanting to show things to each other. And I think about that so much when people talk about kids with Asperger's having trouble connecting socially with just in regular environments. With this kind of situation, it lends itself so much to wanting to show off your your work. And I love what the programmers at MIT have set up, where you can do this collaboratively online, where you can upload your own program and have other people download it and remix it, or you can comment, or you can like, and it's very much an incredible environment that they've set up so that you can even do this, you know, at home. I had some kids that were going home from CoderDojo and coding at home and then coming back the next day to show off what they'd come up with. And this was during summer vacation. You know, I kind of went into it having kind of the same feeling that they were talking about earlier of, I didn't know what kind of kids were giving up their summer break to come to school. And it was every kind of kid, guys, girls, all ages, and just everybody was just excited to make things and share it. And so it was just so incredible that they had that, you know, that opportunity, and I was just really psyched to be able to be a part of it. And so I don't know, that's about all I've got to say. I guess the one last thing that I wanted to leave with was, I'm trying so hard to transition this style of learning as much as possible, because here at Walton Middle School we've got an elective that we just started, and so I'm trying to transition it over, and I'm finding it the biggest challenge for me is to task students with something to do, with a project to do, and set like a deadline for it, but I don't want to crush their creativity. And I felt like within the CoderDojo environment, it was just wildly creative the whole time that I was there. So I want to try to incorporate that as much as possible and be as encouraging as possible just to get it to spread. I've definitely noticed already that my kids are taking Scratch into the lunchroom and still working on it in there, even though we've quit class and we've moved on to lunch. So I guess I've got a little bit of that going on, but that's been my biggest challenge.
Great, thanks, John. I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention the pitch review at MIT, because even though we're in Charlottesville, that's where I met you at that Scratch conference at MIT. And then, 2 weeks later, you're up doing Scratch at CoderDojo.
Oh, I know, that was the quick learning curve. Like that, I showed up and I definitely felt underprepared. Like the kids moved past me so quickly in the coding department, because I really had just been introduced to Scratch at MIT just a little bit before. Within seconds of meeting Kim, y'all, she was already talking Scratch cards, the downloadable things, and the different things that you can use to teach the kids. And of course, I was accessing it just to see if I could figure out how to do things myself.
Well, I think it just points to one of the awesome things about CoderDojo, because of its social and collaborative environment. It's great for the kids to get ahead of the adults, and then they can go and do their own thing. All right, we're gonna try to go back.
This is Paula. I'm in now. Okay, I've got a funny story about this summer too. One day the older kids started learning a program called Stencil. And that afternoon, I got an email from one of my kids who's now in 8th grade, who I taught in 5th grade. And in 5th grade, he used to come into my room every day at lunch and get on the computer and code games. And it was really fascinating to me. I'm the gifted resource teacher in my building, and this was one of my students. And so he would come in here and he would code games, but the first kids he brought in here were not gifted kids. They were truly at the other end of the spectrum. And he was bringing in kids who had been identified special ed. He was bringing in kids who typically don't succeed in school. And he was bringing them into lunch, setting them up with laptops around the room, and then teaching them the coding of the games that he was making, essentially. And he had started his own little website, Spink Industries. And so this summer I got an email from him in the afternoon and said, wow, I've learned this really cool program today that I think you'd really like. It's called Stencil. And I wrote him back, and because I had just learned about Stencil that day also in the CoderDojo, and I wrote him back and said, William, where did you learn about this Stencil program? And he goes, oh, it's a coding opportunity that I'm attending this summer, and a coding class. And I said, so William, where is that thing? And he said, oh, it's at Albemarle High School. And I just laughed because we were at the same place, and I didn't realize he was there. But I was in the morning session, he was in the afternoon session. But 3 years later, that kid's still writing me saying, hey, here's a really cool coding thing to do. You know, and there's all kinds of stories that we can share like that. Any of us who have been involved with Coder Dojos, about older kids helping younger kids, older kids or more experienced kids helping less experienced kids, bringing kids in who need this stuff and who can succeed in ways with this kind of stuff that doesn't necessarily show up in school. Yeah, I'm reading Bill's comment in the chat there about Asperger's, autistic, and dyspraxic kids. Yeah, I mean, this is something that all kinds of kids can succeed with. And what we found out at Crozet, and Kim, we actually had a pre-Coder Dojo out here at my school in the spring. We tried it out, inviting kids from middle school and high school and elementary schools, and we got some from several around the county in the spring just for sort of, let's see if we've got interest. And that's what helped us get going on the summer one too. But it was really fascinating to watch the big kids help the little kids, and that's happened every time we do it. I mean, we've got our Coder Dojo here at my school goes 2:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon after school. The elementary kids get in there at 2:30 as soon as their school is over, and then the middle school kids start coming over about 4 o'clock. And so for the last hour and a half, it's mixed middle and elementary. We haven't had any high school kids come in yet, but the middle and elementary kids come in. And the last class we had, well, a kid's over there doing Minecraft, and 2 third graders say, I want to do what he's doing. And I said, then get a chair over near him and get on one of the computers over near him and ask him the questions. I can't help you with Minecraft. So then they all started helping each other with Minecraft and the programming for that. So there's lots of different things going on, and it's not necessarily all starting from scratch, and I don't mean scratch the program, but not all necessarily starting from like HTML or a programming language, but it's all having to do with creating and using the coding language. It's just absolutely amazing. Kim, did you have any questions that you wanted me to specifically address?
So I was curious why you chose the image here.
Love that one. The image here, I just think of Coder Dojos as a whole room full of tinkerers. This image is a magazine that was written in, and I love some of the stuff it says, because, back when people first evolved, we were fighting for survival. We're no longer fighting for a constant struggle to absolutely just survive, most of us. And this magazine says, our bodies evolved for and hardened by constant struggle often found themselves idle, and without some constant letting, thus swiftly begins the degenerative process of death. Some people have rebelled against this notion and constantly keep on the move, busying themselves with the creation of novel problems and competing to find overly elaborate ways to solve them. So I think that's what Coder Dojos do, allow kids ways to create novel problems, to set them up for themselves, and figure out ways to solve them. So it's kind of, I think of Coder Dojos as kind of a room full of tinkerers, and that's why I chose that image.
Great, thanks. So I think we'll go to Michael now.
Hello, hopefully I can get some video going here. My name is Spike Craddock. I am a computer science teacher, and I kind of use that term loosely. I actually started teaching computer science about 5 years ago. I don't have any formal training in programming, and it just turned out, as we were working on getting our classes lists and our rosters and all that, that we had this extra section of computer science. You already had a full section, and my principal asked me, hey, we need you to teach this computer science section. I said, I have no idea about programming. I have no idea what haven't even written a program in my life. So, well, you can pick up something, and there's something you can get these kids, and otherwise we'll have to put them in a study hall or something else. And I was like, well, that doesn't. I'm sure I can come up with something for these kids to go off of and learn. So, when we talk about the CoderDojo model, this is how I lived my life for the first year in computer science. The students kind of drove the things that we were doing and what we wanted to do in class, because basically I had a brief structure of what we wanted to do, and from there the kids kind of took it. And the neat thing about what they wanted to do is they wanted, of course, they wanted to make video games. So my first venture was down to the Barnes & Noble bookstore and found Video Games for Dummies and brought that into class and said, look, this is where we're going to start page 1, and we started making video games. So 5 years later, student-driven ideas, student-driven, everything. We have a pretty solid year-long curriculum and using Flash to make games. Then in my second year, we wanted to get into something a little more practical. I see lots coming up over and over again about HTML, CSS. And after we hook them on the first year on making games and using Flash, and you're actually using ActionScript 2, which is much more simplified version of Flash's language. We move into HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we do a good bit with PHP and MySQL. And I can put out some links here so you can see some of the projects that we've been working on. So, kind of the idea when they came up and they said, well, here's CoderDojo, the idea is that the kids come in and they, we give them kind of a direction on the move-in, and they kind of take it from there and build stuff and make stuff. And I was like, this is what I do every day in my classroom, so this is kind of a no-brainer to get involved with. And I was involved with the summer academy that we did this past summer, and we did stencil, Scratch, some web page stuff. The CoderDojo page that came up a while ago, the K-12 Albemarle page, was actually, I just was lucky enough to be in the room while students were making that page up. And of course, there's a funny joke where, I gave them a little bit of guidance on how to write some CSS, and then later on in the day, a student came that knew some CSS, and basically tore it apart and said, oh no, this is how you do it, this is a better way to do it, this is how you do it. And absolutely do it your way, do your thing. It all in the end, it all looked the same in the end, but it was kid driven, and that's the best part. So are there any other questions or anything that I can answer as far as from my vantage point working with older students and bringing them in? I definitely have in my classroom definitely the model of kids helping kids, and when one kid sees something across the room of what another kid's doing, it's contagious how it gets from one kid's game to the next kid's game, and there's nowhere in my instructions on how to do it or what to do. So it's a pretty neat thing to watch.
I was wondering, in the CoderDojos you've now held at Monticello, sort of what the age ranges and male-female breakup is?
I would say we had our first one at Monticello last month, and it was about 50-50 boy-girl, and we had everybody from first grade to high school, juniors and seniors in high school, I believe. So there's a wide range, and it's took me a little bit off guard with the little ones. I don't know how some of y'all do it with the energy that they provide, but it was something else to keep up with them.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to quickly go over to the how to start a dojo, and at this point, any the people who've been talking can come on and talk about this. So this is something you'll also find on the website. It's Finding a Champion, and Pam Moran, who is the superintendent of Albemarle County Public Schools, I think is the big grand champion for us, and then all the other people who've been involved to make it happen here. You need a space, obviously. We've been blessed to be able to use school spaces and school laptops and things like that. Recruiting volunteers and mentors, providing open, free, it's a learning environment. It's free, it's open, it's collaborative, and then the basic rule is be cool. But if anybody else wants to chime in, especially Bill or Lindsay, about what you see as starting.
It's not just the basic rule, it's the one rule.
Yeah,
sorry, the one rule.
And I can also say a lot of the time you don't need to provide laptops. A lot of the times the kids will bring their own laptops, whether that's mum or dad's or Uncle Bob's or whatever. So, you know, we've tried to make sure that, you know, as long as you can get the space for free, everything else can just show up. It is an advantage to have Wi-Fi in the space. It's not mandatory. You know, if you've got a sufficiently technical person, they can set up a local server, but it's very helpful. And there's one other thing too that's not on the list, but it's part of Be Cool, which is relax about it. You know, let it happen. Let the chaos occur. Let the inspiring chaos occur. The kids, given the environment and the context, the kids will very quickly start creating things if you just give them a little nudge in the right direction. We have had a lot of people suggest things like, you know, standardized testing and other things, and we think that's sort of uncool, because one of the things that it's really okay at CoderDojo is to fail at something and to have bugs and to pick yourself up and fix that stuff. And I think a lot of the time in the world today we're sort of given this message that it's really bad to fail. And it makes it really hard to really learn if you have any sort of fear of failure. So just relax.
I agree completely with all of that. I'm working with a number of dojos to start up, and the number one thing that seems to slow people down is when they kind of get stressed about how it's all going to work and what they're going to do, and when people just relax and just set a date, go into the room with a bunch of kids, and it doesn't matter what happens at the end of the day, as long as the kids go in and it's all in the spirit of having a bit of fun, it always works out.
Now, it is important to let the kids know that the expectation is that as they become more skilled, that they will give some of their time to mentoring other kids. And, you know, some of the sweetest things I see is, you know, we've got some very young kids who are incredibly skilled, and seeing them, you know, mentoring teachers or older kids is always really sweet. So, you know, break all your stereotypes. CoderDojo's mentorship level is all about ability. It's not about age or gender.
Could I say really quickly that on the CoderDojo homepage, there's one of the big pictures that comes up there is a picture of a young girl with a guy that looks like he's in probably his 70s. And what's actually going on in that picture, which isn't really explained, is that it's actually a girl that was at CoderDojo, went home, and actually started mentoring her grandfather on how to use a computer, and actually taught him how to build a web page.
Which is so cute.
Yeah.
Awesome. So are there questions? If you want to raise your hand, we can put the mic on, or you can type them in the chat box.
I've got a bunch I've written down from the chat above. I've got 3 actually.
Okay.
Perhaps I could run through them. The Teacher Dojo, someone was asking about Teacher Dojo. There's a lot of educators on this call, and it's something we've tested, we are testing in Cork in Ireland. We've got a group of now about, as of last Saturday, I think it was nearly 10 teachers, all kind of working in a collaborative group, being mentored by individual kids that we send down. We've actually separated the teachers off into their own area because they kind of find it difficult to handle the chaos in the main room. So they sit in the foyer of the building, and individual kids will go down and work with teachers to kind of show them different sorts of languages and so on. And that's working out very well because we're starting to get some progress. There's a lot of discussion there about what might fit best in the classroom, because the classroom is so different from the standard from a dojo. So of course, get involved in the chat there. We might follow up on that in a bit. The next question I saw was Scratch. It's a big issue on the chat. Scratch, as far as the sort of main players in CoderDojo, we sort of view Scratch as sort of definitely a starting tool, not really the main power tool that we want people to get started on. Bill's already mentioned this. We would definitely recommend getting kids involved with HTML, JavaScript and CSS as quickly as possible, which are the main web languages and can really be beneficial to helping kids learn programming. And then the syllabus, there was a question about education and sort of putting CoderDojo into schools, and I've seen here that I didn't realize that anyone had really had much success, but I see as of this call that some of the guys on this call have managed to do it. So I think John and both Gabriel, I think both of you have done it actually in the classroom. Is that right, guys? If you're there.
Yes, I've moved into, it's an elective that the kids can choose, and so I'm moving into doing basically as closely as I can to a CoderDojo just during the school day.
Okay. So that's
one of the things that I forgot to mention, which I think is important too, is when kids have an issue, instead of getting them to put their hands up and ask a question of a mentor, I tell everyone first, ask the kid next to you when you have a problem first. And then if the two of you together can't figure it out, ask Google. And then if you and everyone at your table and Google can't figure it out, ask a mentor, but don't expect the mentor to have the answer at that point.
Yep. Exactly, yep.
So kids teaching each other is amazingly powerful.
Great. Are there any other questions?
One other thing that I've found very useful, as our dojo got older, some of the kids got more into games than anything else, and so we have at Man Point said that everyone has to have a project, and a cool project. Doesn't matter what the project is, but they've got to be working on something if we're going to keep them, we're going to allow them to keep coming to that dojo, because we have a big waiting list on pretty much all of our dojos. So, if you're just going there to play games, after a while, that's just, it's a space that somebody else could use.
What is the longest running dojo?
Well, mine at Man Point. We started it at the very beginning. That's at the National Software Center. That's where we started the whole thing, and it's still running to this day.
And when did it start?
Oh, geez. I knew you were going to ask me that.
Bill doesn't do dates. I'm pretty sure it was something like the 16th or 18th of July, 2011.
Yeah, I think it.
I was looking for a month.
Yeah. I think it was July, yeah. Let's see, there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat. Any questions that anyone would like to ask me? Well, I have a request of everybody else, if nobody's going to ask me a question, which is, please go out there, and if you haven't started a dojo, start one. Just start. Even if it doesn't work, it's better to have tried. So get a room and let us know. We'll put you on the website, especially when it's fixed, and you'll have an amazing time, and you'll be doing a lot of good for the world.
if anyone does have any issues technically wise with the website registration and so on, you can follow up with me. I put my email in the chat. It's lindsay@CoderDojo.com, and I can sort you out. There's no requirement to be registered on the website to get started with a CoderDojo. So don't wait on ceremony. Just get stuck in, and we'll figure out all those sort of details after the event. As long as you're providing free open learning for children, and you're good to go.
You obey the one rule.
Yeah.
Be cool.
All right, well, thank you all so much for coming, especially the moderators for being here, and Bill and Lindsay. It's late there, I know, so thank you so much, and anybody else that has been joining us from overseas. And we will sign off, and please keep in contact and start it out, CoderDojo.
Thanks very much, Kim, for running this too, and for the other moderators.